Live from the Opera House, it's Storytime with your host, Ben Whiting.
I'm your host, Ben Whiting, and every week on this show, we're going to have a great story read by a special guest and then have a fun activity that you can participate in right from home. I'm going to tell you the supplies you need for today's activity in a little bit, but if you'd like to know the supplies you'll need for future activities on future episodes, be sure to visit us online or on social media where you can download an activity sheet for future activities and future supplies that you'll need. Now, we all know that when we have a friend who helps us out, it's really important to thank them. And we would like to thank some friends who've made this show possible. Traverse City Area Public Schools, Newton's Road, Tattle, the City Opera House, and our series underwriting sponsor, Bell Tire. Thank you so much from the bottom of our heart for your contributions and your support. Now, on to today's book. Can you believe there was a time that televisions didn't exist? TVs, as you and I know them, have only existed since the late 1920s. And before that, when people wanted entertainment or news and information, they turned to the radio. The radio has been around for more than 130 years, and today's story is about a group of radio actors who pulled a Halloween prank on the country. They fooled a lot of people into believing that Martians, aliens, had landed in their neighborhood, in their city, and were taking over. But it wasn't really happening. Like I said, it was just a prank. And that's the title of today's story, Aliens Are Coming. Now, that lends us to our activity today because you get to be a Foley artist. If you don't know, a Foley artist is someone who creates sound effects for television and for radio to make the stories that are being told more vibrant and more alive and more real, so it feels like you're actually there. What sound effects would you create? We can actually create sound effects right now. Just listen. See, that didn't actually happen here. We had a Foley artist create that sound and add it to our broadcasts. What sounds do you think would be created for the City Opera House? What about your favorite story? What sound effects could you create to make your story seem more real? I often wonder how we can make the sound effect of rain. And that's going to be today's activity. So the supplies you'll need today are a baking sheet, a plastic or aluminum baking pan. You'll also need a ruler and a large piece of paper. And now, for today's special guest, a person who has a lot of experience with the radio, Mr. Ron Jolly. He's been a radio personality on WTCM radio for over 25 years. His education includes broadcasting school, he was a congressional page, and a disc jockey or DJ playing music on the air. And I personally cannot wait to hear him read this story. Mr. Jolly, take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Ben. My name is Ron Jolly, and I work at a radio station right in downtown Traverse City, and I've been there for quite a while, maybe 30 years. Today I'm going to read a story, a true story. This is a true story about the day aliens from Mars attacked the United States. And if you haven't heard that story before, stay tuned. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about radio. Now, radio has been around for a long time, like back in your great-grandparents' days. Today, if you want to be entertained or informed, you can go to your tablet or your little personal cell phone or your television, and you can see video immediately. If you want to be entertained, you can pick up your phone and hear your favorite song. But years ago, people had to go to their radio, and a family would gather around the radio. It was a big old box of a thing, and they would turn it on, and they would listen for the news. They would listen to music, and it was the greatest thing in the world. Then along came movies, and everybody said, "Goodbye, radio," but radio's still here. TV came along, and everyone said, "Goodbye, radio. Radio's still here." And then the internet came along, and everyone said, "That's it for radio, and we're still here." My radio station's a great place to work. I get to meet people every day. They come into our studio and they perform, and we talk about the news, and we get to meet famous people. And it's a great job. If you ever want to have fun instead of work and get paid for it, you want to go into radio. Now, today we're going to read the book, The Aliens, well, not the, but it's just called Aliens Are Coming, and it's by Megan McCarthy. And again, this is a true story. And it all has to do with radio, because way back in the 1930s, 1938, maybe your great-grandparents remember this, people were listening to their radio, and something strange happened. Most Americans back in the 1930s didn't have a television. It was just the radio to listen to. So we go back to that day. It was the day before Halloween. People were getting ready for Halloween, trick-or-treating, putting up scary decorations. October 30th, 1938. Now, broadcasting on the radio that evening was Ramon Raquello and his orchestra playing live music, and they were playing a tango. People were dancing, and suddenly the music stopped. And the people listening to the radio thought, why did the music stop? The announcer came on the air and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program and dance music to bring you a special bulletin. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell from the Mount Jennings Observatory in Chicago, Illinois, reported observing several explosions on the planet Mars. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m., a huge flaming object believed to be a meteorite fell on a farm in the neighborhood of Grover's Mill, New Jersey." Can you imagine that? You were just listening to the music, and all of a sudden, the announcer tells you there's a huge flaming ball and there are explosions on Mars, and that's all they're talking about on the radio. No more music. It's now the news people and the announcer. And a huge flaming ball fell on a farm in Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Now, here's the reporter who was live at that scene. He said, "This is Carl Phillips out at the Wilmoth Farm in Grover's Mill. Well, I hardly know where to begin. The object doesn't look very much like a meteor, at least not like the meteors I've seen. Just a minute. Something's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific." And the voices around him, the witnesses said, "She's moving. Look, the darn thing is misscrewing. It's unscrewing." The reporter said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Someone's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone or something. They have eyes. Good heavens. Something is wriggling out of the shadow. Now it's another one and another. They look like tentacles to me. But that face, I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. Wait, something is happening. The aliens have arrived." The reporter continued, "A humped shape is rising out of the pit. Now the whole field has caught fire. The woods, the barns, the gas tanks of automobiles are all on fire. It's spreading everywhere." And then back to the announcer to tell the people who are listening to that, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are an invading army from the planet Mars." So you're sitting there getting ready for Halloween, and you're listening to the music with your mom and dad. The music stops, and you find out aliens are invading your country from Mars. The announcer on the radio said, "Now those bells that you hear, they're ringing to warn people to evacuate the city. That means get out of the city. The Martians are approaching. The streets are all jammed. Noise like New Year's Eve. The enemy is now in sight." The people don't know what's happening. They're panicked. They need to leave. And the announcer says, "Martian cylinders are falling all over the country. One outside of Buffalo, New York. One in Chicago. One in St. Louis. Now they're lifting their metal hands. This is the end now." Was this the end of the world? Well, obviously not. We're still here. Radio listeners everywhere, in restaurants, in their homes, were panicked. They had to leave. They didn't know what was happening. Operators, you wonder what an operator is. Back in the 30s, if you wanted to call somebody, you had to pick up a clunky old telephone that had a wire on it, and your voice went through the wire to the operator, and she took a cord and plugged it into another hole so you could speak to the person that you were calling. So there's a picture of all the operators. They were flooded with phone calls about the broadcast. Professors were looking for rocks to see if they were from space. Cars full of frantic drivers clogged the highways trying to get away. One man even thought he saw a Martian spaceship. And then the police arrived at Grover's Mill, New Jersey. They went to the farm where the spaceship landed. And what do they find? Only an empty field. There was no fire, there was no spaceship, there were no aliens, just an empty field. Meanwhile, back in the radio studio, actors from the Mercury Theater for CBS Radio continued with their radio show. They were unaware of the terror they caused outside their door across the country. The alien invasion was just a story. Using actors and sound effects, Orson Welles, who was soon to be famous as a movie director and actor, created an all too realistic version of the popular science fiction novel, The War of the Worlds, by H.G. Wells. And he finished by saying, "If your doorbell rings and nobody's there, that was no Martian, it's just Halloween." So they put on a play on the radio, and it was so realistic, everybody thought the aliens attacked. But they didn't. It was just Halloween. The end.
Thank you, Mr. Jolly, for that great reading of that fun story. But now it's time to take what we heard and put it into action. And to do that, we have a special guest here today, Mr. Jeff Culver, who's a teacher at Silver Lake Elementary, who's passionate about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and he's even brought a few members of his family here. Mr. Culver, how about you introduce yourselves and get us started on today's activity?
I brought with me today my son August, who's going into 5th grade at Silver Lake Elementary. Go Seahawks. And I brought my daughter Lily, who's going into her freshman year at West Senior High. Go Titans. And today we're going to experiment with sound. Just like in the book that we just heard, you can make a lot of different sounds with common everyday items. I brought a couple baking pans and a couple pots with me today, just so we could experiment a little bit with the sounds. Sounds all come from a source. My vocal cords are creating a sound that you can hear. The vibrations that are coming from my vocal cords travel through the air, and some of them actually reach your ear, go inside, and vibrate your eardrum. Your eardrum then converts that sound into what you actually hear. I want you guys to take a few seconds to find out what kinds of sounds these common everyday items could possibly make. Don't be afraid of them.
Okay. Well, okay, nobody's there.
I see you guys are far more shy here than you were at home last night,
Oh, yeah.
but that's okay. So I want you guys to think of a thunderstorm. Thunderstorms can get loud and scary sometimes, but I want you to think in your mind how a thunderstorm would start. Does it start with immediately lightning and thunder, or does it start with rain?
It starts with rain.
It starts with rain. Okay, do you think you guys could create the sound of rain using one of these everyday items? It does sound like rain indeed. So I want you guys to recreate a thunderstorm using these items here.
Okay.
Ooh, it's raining a little harder now. And I can hear some thunder in the distance. Oh, the rain's getting harder. The thunder's getting closer. Uh-oh, it's really close now. It's really coming down. Here comes that rain. You have another coming, dude.
No, I don't.
Yeah. And here it is. It's right on top of us. Lightning, thunder. Boom. And then hours away and there's still thunder in the distance. And we still hear the rain. It slowly fades away. And just like that, friends, you can do incredible things with everyday objects that you have at home. Something else that you might have at home is a ruler. Would you guys grab your rulers? I grabbed these from my classroom. Common everyday ruler. And I'm going to challenge you to make some creative sounds with this. You could try your head.
Ow.
Do you have some other objects you could be?
I do want to try some though.
Ah, awesome. So as you can hear, each of these has a slightly different sound. It depends on the medium that it's being either banged against or rubbed against. And I want you guys to listen to something called a pitch. A pitch is the frequency, how high a frequency is that you can make with a ruler. And you're going to put your hand over the end of the ruler and you're going to give it either a downward thunk or an upward thunk. Okay? And see how high of a frequency or how low of a frequency you can make with them. So what are you observing? Why don't you take that one in a little bit? There you go. Oh, that's tricky to do. Notice any difference in them?
Yes, sir.
There's a little bit of difference, isn't there?
And it hurts.
And it hurts too. Well, I think it's time we pull out the big guns.
Yes.
Yeah, I also brought these from my classroom as well. These are meter sticks. I think I might need to move a little bit out of the way for this. Well, on one side it's yard, on the other it's a meter. That's 39.5 inches. So, do you think you can do the same principle with these yard/meter sticks? Whoa, listen to that.
Okay, that's not.
So what are you observing? I'm going to ask Lily.
Yeah.
What are you observing the longer the stick is off the table? What are you hearing?
It's going to be a deeper pitch than if it was higher up like that.
Absolutely. So let's see how low of a sound that you can make. Do you think you could work together?
Whoa.
Do you think that would
Oh,
help?
it's supposed to go like this?
Well, I could barely hear that. Do it again. Okay. Harder.
Okay. Maybe not that
We're
hard.
down 1 meter stick. Maybe not that hard. Let's move over to the other one. Are you okay, Lil?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, maybe don't
Almost
do
a
it
foot.
hard.
Okay, now shorten it up a little bit. There you go, now try it. That's a great sound. Wonderful. Okay, do you guys have any other suggestions that you would like to try with these?
Big break.
Here, how about mine?
Okay. I thought it would be different. No.
That's the joy of experimentation. You can just discover new and interesting sounds.
Maybe flip this over.
One more. Hey, you did great. Thank you guys. And thank you very much for having us today. And again, thank you, Ben and Ron. We really enjoyed it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culver, for helping us out with today's activity. And once again, thank you to Ron Jolly for reading our story today. Thanks again to our sponsors, but most of all, thank you for tuning in. This show would absolutely not be possible if you weren't watching. But we're not done yet, because we want to see what you've created with today's activity. So send us a photograph of your sound studio, maybe even a recording of some of the sounds you made, with your parents' permission, of course, along with your name, age, and a description of today's activity and what you thought was fun about it. One of you will be entered to win a copy of today's book signed by the guest reader and yours truly. You want to email those photographs and recordings to info@tcaps.net. That's info@tcaps.net. Thank you guys so much. If you enjoyed today's show, please tune in every Wednesday at 9 a.m. when we'll be broadcasting our show. And if you want to see some previous episodes, visit us on tcaps247.com. That's tcaps247.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Ben Whiting, and until next time, stay safe, have fun, and keep learning.